Welcome. Tonight, we journey back thousands of years, beyond the gold leaf splendor of sarcophagi, past the towering pyramids and the serene eyes of Sphinx, to a world filled with secrets, a place where the rhythm of the Nile gave life, but also dictated the contours of power, intimacy, and devotion. This is ancient Egypt, not the version etched in Hollywood glamour, but the quiet, complex realm of sacred hierarchies, divine unions, and hidden yearnings. Together, we will explore the forbidden desires of the Pharaoh's court. Desires whispered behind latticework screens, carried on perfumed breezes, bound by ritual and watched closely by gods, priests, and rivals. You are safe here. Let your thoughts drift like a reed boat on still waters, and allow the weight of the present to fall away as we return to a distant world. A world of power and longing, ritual and repression. Let us begin at the lowest rungs of the palace walls, where silks rustled, eyes were always watching, and love was a luxury few could afford. Segment 1. What YIT sucked to be a servant in the harem. Imagine yourself in a dim corridor deep within the palace complex of Thebes. The air is thick with the scent of myrrh and warm stone. Your sandals slap softly against polished limestone. All around you, whispers, footsteps, closed doors. You are a servant in the royal harem. From the outside, it might seem a paradise. Silken cushions, scented oils, golden bowls of dates and figs, a cloistered world of beauty and leisure. But from within, it is a prison gilded in sunlight. The Egyptian royal harem was not merely a collection of concubines. It was an institution tightly controlled, highly regulated, and relentlessly monitored, populated by the wives, daughters, and lovers of the pharaoh, and attended by dozens, sometimes hundreds of servants like you, some born into this world, others taken as tribute, many never to leave. Each day unfolds not in freedom, but in precise rhythm. You rise at dawn. You cleanse your skin in cool water drawn from guarded pools. You are not permitted to leave the grounds. And though you live among luxury, you have no possessions of your own. Every action is watched, every glance accounted for. To speak too freely with a harem woman, especially one favored by the pharaoh, could lead to punishment or disappearance. And the women themselves, though pampered, are not truly free. They are bound by ritual, expectation, and the ever-looming presence of the court. They may be wives in name, but in practice, many are kept waiting for a single night's invitation, or a lifetime of silence. Love is dangerous here. Some women fall for guards, for musicians, even for one another. But discovery means disgrace, sometimes worse. There are stories, quiet ones, of those who vanished, of attendants found weeping in gardens, of lovers taken from their beds in the night. Still, you find comfort in routine, in grinding barley for the morning meal, in trimming incense, in braiding the hair of a lady who, just like you, was once someone's daughter, now hidden behind painted shutters. At night, the palace hushes. The Nile murmurs outside the walls. The moonlight casts long shadows over mosaics of lotus and sun. You lie on a reed mat in a shared chamber, listening to the quiet breath of sleeping women, wondering what freedom smells like, and so the days pass. In repetition, and control, and silence. You are alive, you are safe, but you are not free. Now let your mind drift farther down the Nile, to Alexandria, a city of light and learning, of marble colonnades and perfumed gardens. The air here is softer, the sea always near, and at the heart of it all, a queen unlike any before her or after. Cleopatra, the seventh Philippator. You've heard her name before. It carries centuries of legend, sensuality, power, scandal. But beneath the myth lies a woman shaped by loneliness, duty, and an empire always on the edge of collapse. Imagine her not draped in gold and seduction, but hunched over scrolls in the library, reading in Greek, in Egyptian, in Latin. Imagine her at 13, watching her father, a puppet king of Rome, weep as his court crumbles around him. She learns early to survive, one must captivate. One must calculate. Cleopatra becomes co-ruler with her brother, then sole ruler. And she must protect Egypt from the growing shadow of Rome. So when Julius Caesar enters her world, she doesn't flutter her eyes. She arrives famously rolled in a rug. A message, a metaphor. Here I am, unexpected, unbound, and unafraid. Their relationship is strategic. Yes, intimate. Yes, physical. But also profoundly political. For Cleopatra, to survive as queen is to ally with the strongest man in the known world. And yet, there are whispers of nights spent aboard her golden barge, of laughter drifting over the moonlit Nile, of a child born Caesarian whose future would be both royal and ruinous. When Caesar is murdered, Cleopatra turns to Mark Antony, not just a Roman general, but a man known for indulgence, charisma, and a love of spectacle. With him, she builds a dream, an Eastern empire, a family, a fantasy of equal partnership. They are often portrayed as wild lovers, drunk on luxury and lust, but they were also rulers, parents, allies. Their union defied Roman norms, and for that, they were condemned. Their end is quiet, not the fiery dramatics of Shakespeare's pen, but stillness. Antony dies by his own hand. Cleopatra, days later, by snakebite or perhaps poison, her final act, veiled in ritual, and so she became legend. A woman punished not for love, but for wielding it with power. Let us sit for a moment with that truth. In ancient Egypt, love and politics were braided like the cords of a royal sash. There was no separation. Desire could be divine or deadly, and for Cleopatra, it was both. Now we drift again, backwards, sideways, into the strange and sacred, where magic and love were sometimes one and the same. Now close your eyes and picture a temple. Its walls are cool stone, carved with hieroglyphs, stories of gods and kings, lovers and births, rituals and resurrection. Oil lamps flicker softly in dark alcoves. The scent of frankincense and sweet acacia hangs in the air like memory. You are entering the world of ancient Egyptian belief, a world where love and magic were inseparable. To the ancient Egyptians, life was not a line. It was a cycle. Death was not the end. It was a doorway. And love could outlive the body. They believed the soul had many parts, Ka, the vital essence, Ba, the personality, and others, each with a role to play in the afterlife. These pieces had to be kept intact, nourished, rejoined after death, and so the body was preserved, mummified with care, treated with oils and spells and sacred rituals. But within this reverent process, there were also beliefs softly spoken, rarely written about intimacy after death, of sex magic, of unions that transcended mortality. The opening of the mouth ceremony performed on the dead was not only a rite of speech, it was believed to reawaken the senses, taste, breath, feeling. In some traditions, the soul could return to the body, especially if coaxed by affection, by ritual, by longing. There are erratic spells preserved on papyri, not crude or graphic, but symbolic, poetic, filled with longing and metaphor, invocations for desire, for fertility, for the return of lost love. One spell calls upon Hathor, goddess of love, to bring back the heart of a lost lover. Another uses the scent of crushed lily and myrrh to arouse passion in someone far away. Some rituals involved crafted figurines or amulets placed under pillows. Others were more complex chants sung at night, lines of ink written on skin and then washed away in sacred water. And there were darker corners too. Whispers of necromantic rites, of attempts to summon the spirit of a dead lover into the body of another, of the belief that desire, if strong enough, could pierce the veil between worlds. There's no proof that these practices were widespread, but belief is a powerful force. And the boundaries between magic, medicine, and emotion were never fixed. Even in death, the ancient Egyptians believed the heart remembered. The longing for touch, for closeness, for connection, did not fade with flesh, and so mummies were not only tomb-bound relics, they were vessels of potential, hopes wrapped in linen, desire preserved beneath layers of resin and gold. You may find this strange, even unsettling, but to them, it was love eternal, not grotesque, not macabre, but beautiful, sacred. The soul longs for reunion, and in a world where gods were lovers, where Isis pieced together the torn body of Osiris to create life again, it made perfect sense. Now, let us step away from the temple, back into daylight, back into royal courts and sacred households, where women were both honored and bound by divine duty. Picture a grand courtyard, columns rising like papyrus stems into the sky. Sunlight filters through colored cloth awnings. A hush lingers in the air, because the woman entering this space is not just a wife, she is the consort of a living god. In ancient Egypt, the pharaoh was not merely a ruler. He was Horus made flesh, the falcon-headed deity walking among mortals. When he died, he became Osiris, god of the afterlife. And his queen, she was not just a partner. She was the earthly embodiment of Hathor, or Isis, or Mat. She was sacred. But what does that mean? To be sacred and still human? The role of a queen consort was complex. Publicly revered, she walked in processions beneath fans of ostrich feather. Priests bowed. Commoners averted their gaze. Her image was carved beside the kings on temple walls. She bore titles: Great Royal Wife, She Who Sees, Horus and Seth, God's Wife of Ammon. Yet behind the alabaster statues and ceremonial crowns, her life was tightly controlled. Imagine yourself in her sandals, wearing linen garments stiff with starch, your movements studied, your voice seldom heard outside ritual, your worth laying not in your heart, but in your womb. The sacred wife was chosen for lineage, for politics, for the potential to bear heirs, divine sons who might rule, or daughters married to preserve alliances. The palace was a world of walls, walls draped in silk, yes, but walls nonetheless. You lived among other wives and concubines and priestesses, all vying quietly for favor. At feasts you were seated high, but not highest. At ceremonies you held the sistrum, the rattle sacred to Hathor, but rarely spoke unscripted words. Some queens rose above these limitations. Hatshepsut, who declared herself pharaoh. Tai, who ruled beside Amenhotep III as an equal in all but name. Nefertiti, immortalized in limestone with serene beauty and strength. But for most sacred wives, life was less poetic. It was ritual, duty, and silence. And what of love? If it existed, it was hidden. The pharaoh had many consorts, sometimes dozens. You might see him once a week or once a year. Jealousy had no place in divinity. Longing was unseemly. You played your part in the cosmic order, smiling in procession, weeping in ritual, but rarely asked to speak your truth. Still, there are traces. Amarna letters written with tenderness. Funerary inscriptions where queens were praised, not just as vessels of royalty, but as beloved companions, and always. The silent eyes of statues, the way a queen's hand rests upon the pharaoh's arm in stone, gentle, steady, as if holding something fragile and deeply personal. It is here that sacredness and solitude meet, where being adored by gods meant little warmth from men, where devotion was demanded, but affection uncertain. And so we return, back through the colonnades, back through the years. To a truth repeated in so many corners of history, to be revered is not always to be free. Now, let us drift one final time into the private chambers, where marriage, intimacy, and family took forms both familiar and forbidden. The royal court of ancient Egypt was a place of rituals and shadows, of divine marriages and lonely nights. Love here was sacred, but it was also strategy. Desire, when acknowledged, was structured, sanctioned, and watched. And yet, in the quiet between the chants and ceremonies, behind veils and carved stone, there was yearning. To be seen, to be held without expectation. To love not as a priestess, not as a queen, but simply as a person. This longing hums beneath the surface of every scroll and statue, a gentle heartbeat that history cannot fully erase. And so, as you rest now, perhaps with eyes growing heavy, remember that even in gilded cages, even behind palace walls and divine roles, the desire to connect endured. It was sacred. Yes, but also shackled. Still it persisted, just as dreams do now. Good night, and let the Nile carry your thoughts gently onward, into sleep,